Drum roll. Yeah, live. That's what we got going on today. Yeah, we got the other guys going on today. So we get to talk about other guys' motors tonight. One of them being the 3800 V6, because those are cool. An L67 or an L32, depending on which year you had. And, you know, you got a 240 horsepower version or a 260 horsepower version. One of them got the better blower, presumably better heads. They're supposed to be. But the question tonight is not that. We would take the L32, although people have made lots of power from the L67 also. But the question is, I finished up a video. It's done editing. I'm going to load it up. Probably not going to be up tonight because it's already pretty late, so it's not going to get very much traction. Probably load it early in the morning tomorrow, so it goes all day tomorrow. And that's what I did, is a video that has all of the tests that I did on the M90 supercharger, both on a 4.8 and on the 5.3. So they're all in one video, every test that I did. So it's a lot. It's like 20 or something, or at least all the tests that I could find. There may be more, and it doesn't include any of the NA testing that we did while that motor was on the dyno. It was just kind of specifically stuff that was with the M90. But it got me thinking, and this is a good discussion for tonight, is if we took the M90 and put it on a good 3800 motor, so ported head cam, kind of like the one that I want to run for a big bang deal. So we did, ported heads, good ones. We did a good size camshaft, the thing's making good NA power. And then we ran the blower at the same speed. Let's say that we ran it with the same combination of pulleys that we ran it with the LS, where we ran it to the same RPM. We did a ported intake manifold, a nice one. And so it was a healthy 3800 NA to start out with. And then we put the blower on there. And then we did the same thing to the 4.8. What would be interesting, I think, in this discussion is if we match the NA power output between those two motors. It would be kind of hard to do because we really have to, I think, limit the 4.8. I think it would be hard to get the 3800 up to the power output NA of even a stock 4.8, because it's bigger in displacement. So it would be kind of cool to see if a cooler test, I think, would be the same displacement V8 versus V6, because then we have the things that I kind of want to talk about, and that's the number of cylinders. Because the number of cylinders, I'm not talking about, I don't know, all the weird things people want to talk about, rod lengths and things like that. But what I'm talking about really is head flow. Because here's the thing. If we port the heads on a V6, let's say that we could do a good job, really good job on this kind of test. I'm not going to do this. But if you ported the V6 heads so that they flowed the same as the V8 heads, they don't really flow the same. Not relatively speaking. Let's say that we got both of them to flow, I don't know, 250 CFM, let's say. And if we did, and we got them both to flow 250 CFM, the V8 has the advantage. Because with a V6, if we're going to make the same power as the V8, it has to make more power per cylinder, because the V8 has more cylinders. So if they're both going to make 400 horsepower, or let's pick an easy number. Let's pick a 6 and an 8. They both have to make 480 horsepower. Well, one of them has to make 80 horsepower per cylinder. The other one has to make only 60 horsepower per cylinder. Well, if you only have to make 60 horsepower per cylinder, then you don't need as much head flow. But if you have to make 80, you need a lot more head flow. So to make the same amount of power, you need way more head flow, because you have to make more per cylinder. So that makes life harder on a limited number of cylinder motor. So let me know what you guys think. In fact, that could be our poll, I guess. Okay, we have even head flow, cam, compression, and intake flow. Will an M90 3800 V6 make M90 4.8 liter horsepower? So can the V6 keep up with the V8? Let me know what you guys think. Trying to even all that out as much as we can. But it's kind of a cool discussion, because a lot of guys think that, and I remember getting these comments, they're like, yeah, you spin the blower the same, it makes the same power. Well, yes and no. If you spin the blower the same at the same speed, it could theoretically produce the same amount of airflow, but it doesn't necessarily do that. And the reason that it doesn't do that is because the speed of the blower isn't the only thing that determines the flow rate of the blower. Obviously, discounting the inlet side and the discharge side and where those ultimate flow numbers are, but the resistance to flow on the other side of the blower is really what helps determine the flow rate of the blower. So it's that way with any kind of pump. If we take a fuel pump and measure the fuel flow at a given voltage and at a given pump speed, if we're free flowing, the pump flows a ton. If we're flowing it against 10 psi, it still flows pretty good. 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 psi. As soon as you start getting up and it's building a lot of pressure, the flow rate of the pump goes down. Even if the pump speed stays the same, it still flows less. Same thing with the supercharger. If you run the supercharger at the same speed on a motor that's more restrictive, you're not going to make as much power. What's going to happen is you're going to have a higher pressure. So instead of 7 pounds, you're going to have 10 pounds or whatever the number is. You're going to be making more boost, which is resistance to flow. And so you won't, most people might think, well, yeah, but if the V6 has 10 pounds of boost and the V8 has 7 pounds of boost, then it should equal out. No, actually what you'd want is, especially if you're maximizing the blower speed, you'd want them to have low boost, because at low boost and at the same blower speed, the one with the lower boost actually is going to make more power, because you're not asking it to make more boost and make more power. You're actually asking it to do the opposite thing. So let me know what you guys think. If you think that if the V6 has a way to do it. And I ask this because obviously we're going to get ready in this next year. I got to run some of these. I got to get rid of some of these big bang motors. So the 3800 is definitely on the list, and I want to try to do that. And we have ported heads for it. We have a cam for it, and we can certainly, with almost any set of ported heads and cam and intake manifold that we put together, we can certainly get the thing up to making enough power where we should find the limit of something, the piston or rod, whatever we're going to find the limitation on. We could certainly find something, given how much power we've already made with not a terrible combination, but certainly not an optimized combination, and at a fairly low boost level. We're talking 14.5 pounds or whatever. We were already at more than 600 horsepower. So, once we start getting the boost into the 20s and certainly up near 30, some serious things are going to happen, even with that combination that we had. Now, I'm hoping we can make more NA power, and then in doing the things that I want to do with this motor, shift the power curve, kind of strip some torque out of it, and shift the power production higher in the rev range. We probably will have to accommodate some type of boost controller for that too. And I'm hoping that we can do boost versus RPM. So I can have it be a top end kind of thing and not necessarily, a lot of torque. Because if you look at the power curve on the 600 horsepower combination where we ran the turbo up at different boost levels, man, the boost curve was nice. The power curve was nice. It was like that would be a really good looking motor and a really good looking power curve to actually run in something like a V6 Camaro or whatever V6 thing you want to put it, an S10 truck. I mean, 600 horsepower and 600 foot-pounds in an S10 truck would be a lot of fun. And if that motor, if you could get, I know that the ZZP guys made limited amounts of aluminum heads, but if there were readily available aluminum heads for that thing would be awesome. Because then in addition to making lots of power, because you'd make the aluminum heads flow at least what ported stock heads did, and then go up from there, you would make them much better, and then it would be lighter and it would be better, and there'd be aluminum and it'd dissipate heat and all the good things that you'd want, obviously from a blower application, but also from a turbo application. So let me know what you guys think. If the V6 you think has a possibility. I have videos up where I've compared them at various different things where we've done, because we did a lot of testing with the 3800 too. Some of the early testing, unfortunately, in this video we'll show it because the same thing kind of happened with the LS, was marred by a mistake I made with not having enough timing in it. But that's now been rectified, especially with the advent of now being able to just put an LS throttle body on it, because it makes life a lot easier. That way we can run the TPS and all that, and have a bigger throttle body going into the blower. So we got some cool stuff coming up. I'm excited about the 3800 deal. You know, running a turbo on anything obviously is awesome. And then that motor sounded really good. Yeah, at that 600 horsepower level, it sounded like a serious contender. It's pretty awesome. So we'll see how you guys are doing tonight. Knowledge, what's going on? Bernard, Jet Black. Just finished street racing in Mexico. There you go. How did you do? Was it fun? CB Gaming, what's up? Edward, Sticks and Stones. Your podcasts have become like crack. Checking every few minutes since 7 for the crack dealer. Yeah, we were actually playing some games, so it was pretty fun. Sweet volume wins, Mr. Holdner. Found you on a Netflix show this evening. I did that fastest car thing with Chad, and that was awesome because his family did a tribute to Daphne, and so she was awesome. This is why Ferrari had 4-liter V12s with small strokes, lots of cylinders. Yeah, they didn't have to have, if they have more cylinders and you don't have as much head flow, you can make more power, and you could. I'm sure Ferrari knew what they were doing. They always had fairly good motors, but V12 sounds awesome, and also the head flow thing is a good deal. Lots of valve displacement area, particularly when they started getting into 4-valve stuff. That's really good. The Quattro Valve, part of the M90 with intake, air-cooled with AC system on a 5.3. Okay. Just an intercooler on it works really good. 3800 makes a ton of power. They do. I like them. Richard, I've got a 4.8 and just installed the Summit Stage 2 turbo cam. A set of valve springs from an LS2. Beyond using LS2 spring locator seals, will the springs work for me without shims? I don't know. I don't know what springs you have. I don't know about that. You have to tell me what the specs are on that Stage 2 turbo cam, because an LS2 spring is a 550 lift spring, and it's also not a very strong 550 lift spring. So you have to tell me what that cam is, and if you already have the cam, you already have the cam. I don't recommend a Stage 2 turbo cam on a 4.8. I recommend something smaller than that. I'd like to see an inline 6 versus a V8, a stroker inline 6 4.8 versus 4.8. That would be interesting. You have the same problem, though, with an inline 6 cylinder that you do with a V6, is that you have to have a lot of head flow on an inline 6. And I haven't seen any that have a ton of head flow, unless you're talking about, some of the 4-valve stuff. After much debate, I've decided to go with a Turbo 400 with my build. Now my question is Truck Norris or BTR Stage 3 turbo cam, and what stall converter for the 5.3 turbo I'm building for 700, 800 daily driver. I don't think that's even a choice. You should go with the smaller cam, definitely. And if you're looking at a Truck Norris, which I love the guys at BTR, that's an excellent cam. My low buck truck camshaft that I have does what that does. It's just a lot less money. So that's, if you're considering buying a cam, take a look at richardholdenerperformance.com. I think you'll be happy. And we made on the 5.3 with that low buck truck camshaft, 600 came at like 7 pounds, 625 came at 7 pounds. And then I think a 17 pounds was 920. So you can make, with the smaller cam, you can make all the power that you want. You can make as much power as that turbo will support. You could max out the turbo. But with a smaller cam, whichever one you choose, you get a lot more low speed boost response. So everybody that I've talked to that has put these smaller cams in with their turbo thing, everybody's been happy with it. And so unless you're going drag racing and you want lots of RPM, I wouldn't pick a Stage 3 turbo cam. Richard, how much is the max lift you can run on a stock factory rocker LS rocker? Around 600 seems to be kind of it. I think guys have gone more than that, but you start to worry about the rocker kind of rolling near the edge of the tip of the valve. And so guys start thinking about roller stuff, but you have to be really good with your spring rate on that. Richard, have you ever done anything with a Jeep 4.7 liter? I have not. I have seen one in a wrecking yard. There are too many LS engines out there. I build Kia Power. The TD8 1.8 engine is a beast. Is it? What is that? What does that motor make? Would you consider testing a basic compound setup with an M90? I already have that up. That video is already done. We ran a turbo blowing through the M90 on the 3800 V6. And we've also done twin turbos blowing into an M112 on a 4.6 liter Cobra motor. So that's already been done. And we've done one turbo blowing into the other also. I was spectating. Okay, cool. Danny, what's going on, Ragtop? I read that 3 cylinders and multiples of 3 have less vibration. So you want a 9-cylinder then? Is that what you're talking about? One time I saw an M90 on an old school RX-7 rotary with an Edelbrock 4-barrel. That would be cool. I don't remember seeing a little blower on the rotaries. Lots of like 4-barrel Holley and that kind of stuff. And then also, obviously, the side drafts, Webers and Delordos and things. Richard, do you think the Summit Big Nasty Cam would make 500 in an LY6? Do you have the LY6 intake manifold and rec port heads on it? What is I'm hearing about Hemi heads on a small block Ford motor? I haven't seen that. I have a single pusher fan on my radiator in my 500-ish horsepower 6-liter. Temps get hot. You have a pusher fan? You have a fan in front of the radiator? That's not nearly as good. Can you put a sucker fan on it? Usually built for the strip, but I'm switching it to daily. What fan setup should I use? The mechanical fan is going to be the best. It takes some power to drive it, but the reason that it takes some power to drive it is because it moves a lot of air. You can also do a factory style like dual fan, but on the suction side, and that works good too. But a pusher fan is not very good. An M90 on my 4-liter 6-cylinder on my Jeep. I would much rather have that than the 318 in my other Jeep on stock axles. The inline 6 with the M90 has way better torque. Cool. Can you explain advance on cam grinds? The 114+4 means that they've changed the center line of the camshaft. So lobe separation angle is the distance between the two lobes. And now what they've done is change the center line. It's relative to piston position. The 2J stroker I saw was a 4.8 at the track. A 4.8 stroker 2J? How did they get that much displacement out of it? That very large turbo that claimed 2,000 horsepower ran a 4.8. That's making a lot of power. Do you have preferred roller rockers for the LSs? What is it you're trying to do? I don't actually recommend roller rockers for LSs. I don't recommend high lift cams for LSs either. So maybe if we backtrack a little bit and you tell me what you're trying to do, I can maybe steer you in the right direction. I remember a 371 on a 12A. That would be cool. On LY6 manifold. Jesse, what's the intake duration on that? What are the intake and exhaust duration specs on that Big Nasty Cam? 3024 with a carb intake won't stop leaking coolant out the passenger side. Any advice? What I like to do on Fords is we silicone around the water passages when we put the gaskets on. And then I silicone along the water passage when I put the intake on the gasket. And on the Felpro gaskets that we use, there's a section that goes in intersects the middle of the water passage. I cut those out. And if you do that, usually you don't have problems. Sometimes with old heads, they get porous, particularly on cast iron heads that have been used a lot. Sometimes they're warped. Sometimes the intake's warped. Also make sure on a Ford intake, because of the way that the intake bolts go down, you have to go through the torquing process for intake bolts many times before the thing's actually tight and square. What's a good cam for a 450 horsepower 5.3, mostly drag racing? But I'd like to drive it to the track. Is the rest of the motor all stock? Are you trying to make 450 horsepower at the flywheel? Because it's not going to do it at the wheels. 450 horsepower at the flywheel with just a cam? Or do you have other things going for you? Do you know if Richard, do you know if an M90 would bolt to the lower intake on an 07 Impala with a 3900 LZ8? It's not going to. What would be cool to pull one out of the junkyard and put it on? It's not going to just slap on. You're going to have to make an adapter plate to make it work. So it's going to be more involved than just bolting the blower on. Richard, Sean, what's going on? On my other account today, I actually post stuff on. Cool. Does anyone have a recommendation for a machine shop in the Houston area? I found sparkles in my oil. I think I need a 408 stroker to fix my problem. That's the answer to anything. That and boost is always good. I still need to get a radiator and fans for my Corvette, but it's winter, so I don't need it right now. Good. Twin M90s on a 4.8. That's not going to happen. Oil glitter is never a good time. Jesse, a 218 230. I don't think a 218 230 gets you to 500. Let's see here. Dyno results. Rec port. 6.2. I know it sounds 6.2, but that's where all my stuff is hidden. 6 liter. LS3 intake. Cam, let's see. So the LS3 intake made 474. I mean, the LS3 camshaft, the stock LS3 camshaft. Let's see if I had something else that's smaller. The sloppy stage 2 cam made 512. So I don't think you're going to quite get to 500 with that small of a camshaft. L77, what was your question here? Oh, what's a good cam? 1101, 799 heads. And what intake do you have on there? But I have lots of L33 videos up where you can make 500 or 450 horsepower. You could get really close to that with my low buck or my Truck Plus camshaft, or a BTR hot rod camshaft should get you really close to that. Stage 2 cam is a 226 230 for the 4.8. Like you said, I already own the cam. I was hoping to use GM springs and curious. You can't use the GM LS2 springs. That's a 600 lift cam, and those are only 550 lift springs. You need to buy springs for that, and you're going to need a dual spring for that. So you're going to need some fairly, they're more expensive springs. Happy to help, man. Does the +4 add to lower end torque, or would this add to the higher end power? Asking because we're running twin 6 GT35s, so we're hoping to resolve boost response. What's the duration on the camshaft? The +4 is not going to help you much. What the specs are on the camshaft are much bigger indicators, or have much bigger effect on the low speed response. And then other things too, like the intake manifold, turbo sizing, the NA power output. So I'm going to be getting an L94 engine. I'm going to try swapping it at a Grand Wagoneer. The engine was an 88 Supra. The back of the car flared to fit some really big tires. I said it was sleeve for bigger pistons. Well, to go from a 3 liter or a 3.2 liter to a 4.8 liter takes lots of stuff. It takes a big change in stroke and a big change in bore. That would be a big change in displacement. Richard, you ever considered going on or calling into a podcast? I have been on podcasts, and I'm probably going to do more in 2025. I have a Summit Stage 2 cam and spring kit, 226, 238. Yeah, all of that will work on your LS1. Yeah, podcast stuff is fun as long as the people that are there doing the interview know, long as they got their game, I'm ready to go. LS6 intake manifold. Okay. Yeah, all of those cams I just mentioned will work for you, L77. Touch of nitrous, yeah, that gets you right there. Got a YouTube short recommended to me where someone posted the Truck Plus cam in their truck. Sounded good. They did a idle clip. That's good. BTR hot rod cam. Yep. I'm looking to put a Tsunami Stage 4 cam from TSP in my LS1. Want a super choppy cam for an NA street car. The specs are 235, 240, 111. Ask them if that cam fits stock piston to valve clearance. That's a pretty big cam, and that's getting up near the limit of available piston to valve clearance. You definitely are going to have to measure that unless they tell you for certain that it fits. Yeah, Big Joe, I was going to say, I don't know that I can help you with that, but never done anything with cams before. Yeah, I wouldn't go. If you just tell me what your combination is and what kind of power you're trying to make, I could tell you how to do that. That's a really big camshaft. New cam specs are 226, 234, 114 plus 4. I was watching your videos. I got a 6-liter LS. Was thinking TFS 225 heads, stage 3 cam, or should I go the cheaper route with the 823 ported heads, stage 3 factory LS3 intake? My goal is 550 horsepower. You want to make 550 horsepower NA, and it's a 6-liter? Either one of those heads are going to get you there. The TrickFlow 225 heads, particularly if you team it with a fast intake manifold, is going to make more than the 823 heads are going to. I don't know what intake you're going to use with that 823. Don't use a fast intake manifold. Just use a stock LS3 intake manifold. With a big enough camshaft, I think you get there with either one of those combinations. Precision. Precision 7275. Too small of a turbo for an LS3 with a stock cam, strictly street duty. It's going to be real responsive. It's probably not the cam that I would pick. Where can my team reach out to you about calling into our show? You can send me an email. I'll put my email down. We could see what's going on. What about Fieros? Yes, especially engine swap Fieros. Those are good. Can a stock LS1 bottom end with ring gap handle the same power as a stock bottom end LM7? It cannot. Not with that aluminum block. Can Gen 4 aluminum block 5.3 be bored at all? Yes. They can also be sleeved, and then you can make giant motors out of them. Big Joe, do some research and watch more videos. So found my problem today. Yeah, Big Joe, just tell me what power you're trying to make, and I'll tell you what combination you could put together to make that power. So I found my problem today with the double roller damper interference. You need to align the oil pump to have full clearance. So when you stuck the pump on, it wasn't? It only kind of goes on one way, right? They said it was a TRD test engine. They were seeing what it could handle. It was their first time in the car. They had a few dyno poles. Only saw the car once. Cool. How big exhaust duration can you do with a 6-liter and 243 heads? You can do all of it. The exhaust valve doesn't hit. I mean, you could do 248 or something. 248, 250 probably. Depends on the, it's going to depend on the actual valve events, but we've run 248 stuff on it. I don't know. I'm curious as to why you're asking that, though. Can find any information on parts and species. Yeah, just if you, Big Joe, just tell us what motor you're wanting to build and how much power you want to make, and then we can tell you how to do that. Just as long as we aren't talking about Fiero's viability as a platform for building for spacecraft. I don't think they seal very well. What turbo for an 800 wheel horsepower 408 small block Ford that makes 550 horsepower NA? Well, you I would put like a 7875 or an S475 on it for right now. Later on, I might be talking to you about something else, but that's kind of what I would use right now. Richard, did you ever test a chili bomb? I did. I don't know about the flow rating. We tested it on the 1 liter Metro, where it's making, I don't know, 40 horsepower, 50, 60 horsepower at the tire, I think. So it easily did that. L77. Yeah, a lot of the other aluminum blocks, LS1, LS2, LS3, you can't bore them. You can only bore them about 5,000ths. The aluminum blocks you can. The aluminum 5.3 blocks you can. Plan on running a 302, a GT40 heads, F303 cam, single plane Victor Jr. intake manifold. How much power should it make at the crank? The heads are going to kind of hold you back. With headers and a good carburetor, a 650 or 750. I'm thinking it's low 300s probably. Looking into air water intercoolers for the Porsche. As long as they don't say Porsche on them, you should be okay. I mean, in terms of cost. My spider sense is tingling. Someone mentioned Fiero's. It was off center like 2000s, but it's enough that the shoulder on the damper was touching the oil pump rotor. Like less than 1,000ths, but enough to lock the crank. Okay. Why aren't stage 4 cams recommended for daily drivers? Because they're big top end ones that don't have a whole bunch of bottom end, and then they don't have a bunch of good quality idle, and they don't work with stock converters very well. The LT8 looks like a good start for a race street engine. Looking to make 450 horsepower. Yeah, that's really easy. That's a cammed 5.3 or a cammed 6-liter. That's not hard at all. You don't have to get all elaborate to do that. I'm seeing more cams with lots of exhaust duration. I figure a 6-liter with a 243, I can probably run around 232 intake. Some cams are in the 240 to 245 exhaust. Yeah, that's pretty normal for a cam. I was daily driving a stage 4 cam and a Fiero. Anyone know what the L8Ts have been making stock bottom ends? They don't do very good on a stock bottom end because the rods aren't very good in those. I'm looking to make all the power. That's everybody, right? I want to make top fuel power. You really probably don't. How close to 600 could I get with a 408 and 823 heads and LS3 intake? Would the 469 cam do it? I think I'd go with something bigger than that if you want to get to 600 horsepower. I think we did 625 on that 408, and it had really good heads on it. It had Airflow Research heads on it. So shout out to the Airflow Research guys who do an excellent job. Those are really good heads. And it had a fast intake manifold on it. And it had a bigger than 469 cam in it. The heads are a bit small. I have gone, imported, and polished them, addressing the issue in the bowls and blended the small radius area. Plan to push it between 450 and 500 horsepower. Oh, yeah, you'll be able to do that with the turbos. That's not going to be a problem at all. What do you think about the second gen LT157? I have videos up on those, and I have one right now. I am an LT1 owner. I've also done the 4.3 LT base motor as well. LT has been pushed over 2,000 horsepower, but not a stock bottom end hasn't. They didn't have a stock bottom end when Skog and Dickey did that. They did forged rods and forged pistons in it because the stock L8T rods are not very strong. LS1 450 horsepower NA automatic. Yeah, an LS1 450 horsepower is just a cammed LS1. I'd put a better intake manifold on it, but the stock heads will do that. That's really easy. It's not going to be 450 wheel horsepower. It's going to be 450 flywheel horsepower. Thought I'd be satisfied with my sweat setup, but it's never enough. It's fun at first, but 700 horsepower feels like 400 very quickly. Chris, what's going on? Happy New Year to you too. I have an LQ4 doing an NA build for a street. What's the best factory head to help bring that compression up while flowing good? Maybe 500 horsepower. The most powerful factory head you could put on your 6-liter is any of the rec port heads. If you want to bring compression up compared to a 317 head, that head's not going to do it unless you mill it. If you want more compression, a 799 head will do that, but it won't make as much power as a rec port head because it flows 50 CFM less. I figure 450, 500 and a 65 Mustang should make it fun. Oh, it'll be awesome, yeah. Because a 65 Mustang doesn't weigh very much, and they're cool. I had a 65. Mine was not a fastback, and I used to tell people that real Mustangs had trunks because I have a notchback too, and I'm an original owner of a notchback. But I've changed. I like a lot notchback in the 5-liter, but I like the fastback in the 65 and 66. The Shelby stuff. It doesn't have to be Shelby stuff, just that body style. But a Shelby clone would be awesome. Especially like a Shelby clone with a Coyote in it, I think would be cool. I'm a Jeep guy, and I think the first gen Mustang is cool. I agree. I know some guys like them, like the Bullet Mustangs, but that's not my jams. I like the 65 and 66, and then I like the 69 and 70. I like the 71 motor, the Boss 351, but not necessarily the body style. I know. Guys like this. I get it. That's the thing. There's a shop that built a Shelby with a 5.2 Predator engine from the newer GT500. That'd be good. Like something with just a ridiculous amount of power. A 5.4 or 5.8 supercharged motor, or the one that you're talking about. What does it call it? Predator? Yeah, that would be any of those would be cool because it's a spin the tire amount of power like at almost any vehicle speed. Love the fastback. However, I have followed your Colt for 302s and 351s. We just put an IFS kit on the 65. Shock towers are gone. There you go. You got some more room now. Honolulu, what's going on, man? I've been there a few times. I love it over there. Power to weight ratio is the key. Some setups you reach power level where more power just isn't usable. It just means that you can spin it at 120 and not just at 100 or 80. 760 horsepower seems like enough for a Shelby to move out of its own weight. Yeah, it should be good. Do you sell motors? I don't. I mean, sometimes I do if I'm done testing with them and stuff. So sometimes I do. I probably will end up selling one or both of the aluminum 5.3s at some point. But both of them are getting like forged rods and forged pistons and all that stuff. Actually, just bought a 66 Mustang Coupe. That's what mine was. Mine was a Hypo 289. So a K car, not to be confused with the Chrysler stuff. It was a 4-speed, 4-series gear, had pony interior, all the stuff. By the way, if I like the Coyote motor, swapped one to my 78 Camaro with an S475 turbo, runs 9s. Ford guys love it. Chevy guys, that's okay. You do what you do, man. All of these motors can make power. The Coyote certainly can make power. Sell the Big Bang parts or give them away. I've thrown away lots of the Big Bang stuff. It's good. It's cool carnage photos and stuff. It brings back memories. Have you ever been to Australia? I have not, and I would love to go. In fact, I talk to my family about that all the time. My wife has her 66 Mustang with a 300 horse 302 There's a 272 rear gear. So it's a highway flyer, man. I had it up to 138 and started to shake. Yep. I pulled the 289 3-speed out of it. It's OG 5-speed engine. OG 5-bolt engine. Okay. Now it's stored away. That's an early one, right? Introduce you to an emu and a goanna. I'd like to go catch a goanna. That would be awesome. I would like to go in the outback. I'll try to keep away from the King Browns and stuff, but it would be hard for me not to do that. And I would like to see some big salties too. Could sell novelty charts with big bang engine bits. I can make keychains out of the broken connecting rods and stuff. My favorite one is one of the rods that we bent. And it seems to me that it's hard to bend a powdered metal rod. You think that it just would be destroyed, but we actually bent one of them in I think it was the 5.3 big bang motor. Better off to watch Joanna. You need the common man type hoodie back on. Oh, without the fuzzy. Too many spiders the size of dinner plates. I'm not a big spider guy, but it would be cool to look at them though. So what's the main reason for porting heads if you only gain a little from it? You don't only gain a little from it. Take a look at all the videos I have up on cylinder head comparisons. I did a bunch of them on the LS, cathedral ports, rec ports, and LS7 stuff. So you can take a look at all of that. I'm thinking of porting some 823 heads if I get them. It's pointless. It's not pointless. It's just on an 823 head, you have a cylinder head that already flows 300 CFM and can support more than 600 horsepower the way that they are. So if you put that on a 500 horsepower motor, you've already got way more cylinder head than you need, and porting them doesn't add to that. Now, we've talked about this many times that, then you have a 700 horsepower set of cylinder heads that you're putting on a 500 horsepower motor. It'll help a little bit, but when we put a set of ported heads on an otherwise stock LS3, it added 10 horsepower. It's not because the heads, because then we put those same heads on a big stroker motor and they made, 750 horsepower or something. It was a lot. So the heads could certainly support that. It's not the head's fault. It's just that you don't have enough motor to go with those. I have a 393 on my 68 Mustang, and the shock tower is the most hated part of the car with the head and headers. Yeah, that's almost like custom header area. The 347 I bought had thrust out on the crank and missing a spiral lock, so destroyed a piston. So picked up an 88 302 HO, the best year of the Mustang genre. Just re-ringed and bearing, found a C4 and tore it down, freshened it up. Cool. 660 lift is ridiculous with an LS1 without dish pistons. No, because the lift has nothing to do with piston to valve clearance. But you don't need a 660 lift cam to make power. So to make power, you could make a 450 horsepower if you took a stock 5.3 and put my Truck Plus camshaft in it and put a fast intake manifold on it, it'd make 450 horsepower. And that one's a 585 lift. You could almost get there with the 550 lift cam that I have. So you don't need big lift stuff. Now, all you're going to do is hurt spring life. I took more hurt and damage from blue bottle stings in the ocean rather than what I ran into on land. Yep. You don't want to do box jellyfish. You don't want to do sea snakes. You don't want to do any of that. My son got stung by jellyfish when we were in Mexico, and my wife a little bit because she was saving him. Welcome to Australia. South Australia has a great new drag strip called the Bend. That'd be cool. Improving velocity helps. Richard, have you ever heard of a Formula Z pipe? It's a 3D printed crossover tube similar to HX pipes. After the collectors, it splits the tube. Apparently, it removes the drone. I don't know what you mean by thoughts. First gear, 70 plus seconds to 115. It was like a 2-speed transmission. The engine revved to 7,000. The engine got my Maverick to run 1279 at 107 at Bakersfield years ago. Cool. Richard, do you have any small block Ford cams? I have to look. I have one small block Ford cam. I have an Extreme Energy 274, kind of my favorite cam. It's a hydraulic roller. It had surface rust on it, which I have cleaned off, and I would use the cam without any hesitation at all. but I kind of hesitate selling it to somebody. 450 horsepower 5.3 that I was talking about is going into a Toyota Celica. Cool. There was a guy that had an LS in one with the Edelbrock Cross Ram in a Celica at SEMA. It was very cool looking. There's some 821 heads. I'm thinking about putting on an LQ9. Would this be a good upgrade? Daily driver, possibly a low buck truck camshaft. Yes, that would be good because the LQ9 has a flat top piston, so you don't have the same low compression that you have on an LQ4. An 821 head will make more power than the 317 heads that you had on there, and that will be a good upgrade. My dad had a 67 Mustang with a 390. He had to unbolt the motor mounted jacket up to change the spark plugs. Yeah, 390 is a tight fit in there, but a cool combination in the 67 though. How often do you go live? I try to do it at least once a day, and usually it's at 7 o'clock at night. And then also another one sometime randomly during the day. I have a sloppy stage 2 cam and my boosted 6-liter. I'm really considering putting your low buck truck camshaft in it. Can you give me an idea on how much power I'll lose on the top end? I normally shift at 7,000. I have 18 pounds of boost. Do you have a converter in that? If you have a converter in that, I might tell you not to do that change. The sloppy stage 2 cam, I can tell you because we've compared it. Well, we've compared it to, I think we've compared it to a truck Norris, I think, which would be really close. Let me go back and look. Cam comparison. No, that's not it. Let's see, 5.3 cam test. There we go. This will give us an idea. Okay, so the sloppy stage 2 cam will make more power from about, it will start making more power from about 5,000 on up. And it was, let's see, 23 versus 38. So it's 15 horsepower better on the top, like out at 6,000 and 6,500. Both of them hang in terms of power pretty well. So even if you're going to 7,000, that's going to be about the difference. The smaller camshaft will be up like 30 foot-pounds at 3,300. Yeah, actually 33 or 34 foot-pounds. And then is better up to 5,000 RPM. So depending on your converter and that stuff, I would say that the smaller cam gets you up to speed better. And then I don't know if the other one would take over or not. If you have a big converter in it, like a 3,000 or 4,000 RPM stall converter, I'd say keep what you have. If you don't have that, then I think you're going to, and you're driving that thing around, then I would put a smaller camshaft in it. Yeah, Danny, I could check around and see if there are other ones besides that one. Would it be noticeable difference between going from an 862 to a 243 head on an 0553 with a Trailblazer SS intake manifold? No, that's not a swap I would do. My dad had jacked up I would be more apt to take the 862 heads off and then do a little bit of porting and stuff on them than I would be to change the head to a 243 head on a 5.3. My dad had jacked up the motor on his 428 and a 69 Mach 1 too in order to change the plugs. Yeah, that's a cool car. 69 Mach 1. You can add more boost to fill in the top end. Are truck Norris cams good? Yes. What stage 3 cam do you recommend for an LS2 550 horsepower, and what size stall do you recommend to line up with that? What, Katie, what are you trying to get done? 3,000 stall? That's probably about right for a stage 3 cam. A 550 horsepower LS2 takes a pretty good size camshaft. Is there a plan for a big bang, big block in the near future? I have already done that partially. We've already done into 4-digit power levels with a big block, with a 454, a Gen 6 one. If I don't have enough projects now, I have an 82 Celica GT with 750,000 miles on it. It'll be a good car for someone to put an LS5 light car in. Truck Norris and TSP Chopacabra are good cams for a truck to give it a bump. Yeah, both of those cams work good. L33 came with 799 243s and has flat tops. And then L33 is going to be an aluminum block, and LM7 is going to be the iron block. Easy to tell the difference between those two. Crazy Foot, what's going on? Crazy. How'd our poll do? If we have even head flow, cam compression, and intake flow, will an M90 3800 V6 make M90 4.8 liter horsepower? 56% saying no, 44% saying yes. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Very, very, very quite contrary. Problem with the V6 is they sound like a V6. Sitting in the middle of a field of mud in a Jeep covered in mud. There you go. If you have a rear-mounted turbo on a wagon, can I get away with not running an intercooler like most people would? No. You're still going to have a hot charge temperature. Even though you have a big length of pipe, you might take away some of it, but the problem with flowing hot air through a tube is the boundary layer right next to the tube. And so all the hot air doesn't come in contact with the tube. Only the boundary layer does. A 90-degree pushrod V6 is different than an overhead cam V6. Yeah, 4-valve motor would be different, and then a split pin crank motor is going to be different, and all of that. There. So I may as well just run the turbo up front with an intercooler. You can. I didn't know if you wanted to put the turbos in the back. Like some guys put them in the bed of the truck and that kind of stuff, just for packaging. But I wouldn't do it thinking that the tubing is going to be an intercooler. I'd be way more worried about the response. 10 Flowmaster. Unfortunately, I can't run over 18 pounds at the moment because I'm only running pump gas. It's pretty spicy with pump gas too already. The 96 Camaro was throaty with the 3800. Yeah, same motor, just no blower on it. Got a 3800 V6 ZZP downpipe, crossover pipe, spin tech mufflers. Made it sounded good. You like the way that sounded? That's all that it's important. It's not a universal thing. Everybody doesn't like the way that everything sounds. I did not like the way Flowmaster sounded on a Mustang. I had a Mustang and we went through all that, but I didn't like the way they sounded. I love the way the Boral exhaust sounded. I actually liked the way that my Super Trap sounded, but they were restrictive, and I didn't find that out till later. Isn't 10 pounds questionable on pump 93? No, you guys can get away with lots of stuff. It depends on what the static compression is and how well the intercooling is and what motor you're trying to put that, pressure to. What is the detonation sensitivity and stuff. I really like the 3800 swaps in the Fieros. Junk intercooler, high eights compression, small block forward. If you have good heads on it, I need 50 pounds of boost. That'd be a lot. I'll give them all kinds of performance for a sound I prefer. Yeah, lots of guys pick V12 Ferraris because they sound awesome. Actually, their V8s also sound awesome. I had a Super Trap on a Fiero with a 2.8 liter V6 and didn't like it. Sounds like a motorcycle. I like the way open exhaust with turbo sound. They do. And I can tell you, even running the turbo stuff on the engine dyno, when we run the turbos with a stock cast exhaust manifolds, feeding the single turbo versus running the headers with a feeding the turbo, sounds different. Data line, what data line is getting squeezed? I want a big block and a Fox body just for the sound. That's terrible performance anyway. It's I mean, that's been a tried and true thing. If you take a Fox body, you can get it to hook up and drag race pretty well. And then you put a big block in it, even like a nitrous big block could make a lot of power. I almost accidentally bought an F430 once. It was the last of my high school dream cars I haven't had, so it'll happen eventually. Nice. Those are nice. Super Trap, don't hear them very much anymore. Yeah, this was a long time ago. Ran them on bikes. My friend had them on his RD400 back in the day. I also like zoomies and nitro flames. The flame part of it is really definitely cool. Going down the track with all the candles lit, that's awesome. It took me a Flowmaster 60 and 3 resonators to get my other stock Celica 4-cylinder to sound good. I meant the Super Trap sounded good on the motorcycle. Okay. That's all good, man. There's no bad answer. I had to move the Fox firewall 4 inches to put in a big block. Was it that much? It wouldn't fit. I mean, it would overhang the nose a lot, but in what way do the manifolds into single and headers into single sound differently? They sound dramatically different. The motor sounds different. I don't know if the exhaust manifolds, if the thickness of the exhaust manifolds is muffling the sound somehow. It's not, if it's resonating, it definitely does have a different resonance frequency. I bid on one on Cars and Bid as a meme, and 2 minutes before the end, I still had the high bid. Flowmaster Super 44 Delta Flow 3-inch dual 2.5 out. Are the sound that you like? Cool. Richard, do you like the sound of a split manifold on an inline 6-cylinder? You mean like a 3-into-2 header? Nothing better than me. Sounds better to me than a Fox Mustang with Flowmasters. A lot of guys feel that way. It was that Flowmaster sold a lot of mufflers back in the day. I just was not, just not for me. Boost replaces displacement. It does. If you look at the difference between a 4.8 and a 5.3, you can get that with boost. Is the LS6 intake a good option for my LS1 Camaro? Should I spend the money on a fast? The fast is definitely going to make more power than an LS6 intake manifold. If you already have it, I don't know that I'd spend the money on the fast. If I was picking between those two and had to buy each one of them, I think I'd spend the extra money on the fast. Maybe you could sell the LS6. I like the way that Buddy Ingersoll's Pro Stock Turbo Buick V6 sounded. I don't think I ever got to see that in person. 4-cylinder Flowmasters T10s. They cut the manifold in half, block the ends, run dual exhaust. Sounds dumb. Technically, anything you can do to a small engine, including adding boost, you can do to a bigger one and make more power. Yeah, but it's not about making all the power. That's why this channel exists. It's about making what you have be able to make more power. So if you have a rotary and you want to, here's how to make more rotary power. If you have, I have lots of Honda stuff up. I have the 3-cylinder Metro and Sprint stuff that I've done. All of those things are just about, hey, here's what I have, because lots of guys have different things. In fact, most of the guys have things. They don't have an empty thing and go, okay, now what should I pick? If they do that, we just, hey, just put a swap an LS into it with a turbo on it and go on about your business. But if they already have a Celica, or they already have a D series Honda, or they already have whatever, hey, what should I do here? Okay, well, here's how you add more power. You port the head, put more cam timing in it, put a header on it, put a turbo on it, put a blower on it, put nitrous on it, all of those things. The other guy's Ford 3842 S6 V6 seems like, as long as you sealed head gasket good, they could be decent. Factory aluminum heads, roller cam, carburetor, and fuel injection. 1996, you were the man if you had Flowmasters in a modular Ford. In terms of the guy saying boost replaces displacement, yeah, he's just saying somebody has a bigger motor, then you could make bigger motor power with boost. I need a cam, my Gen 5 LT1 this year. Not sure what intake manifold I'll go with. Probably the MSD. Yeah, it just depends on where you want your power production at. The MSD is going to be better than the LT1 intake manifold, but it's going to trade power. And then BTR has a bunch of good cams for the Gen 5 motors. Sometimes swapping in a bigger engine is not an option. Yeah, like when I run Bonneville, I don't want to put a bigger motor in the Civic or in the Jetta or in the Volkswagen Bug or in the Suzuki Kazashi or whatever. We don't want to swap bigger motors in those. In fact, I want to swap smaller motors into them, if anything. I have a spare LSA block. I've heard that they're made differently than the LS3. Do you want to put it to the test? You have we have email back and forth in the past about it. Let me know. I'm not interested in running a block to see how much the block will take. That's not. I'm sure that there's information out there on guys who have run LSA blocks. I can ask Brian if anybody has run very high horsepower with LSA blocks. Probably seen 40 deer tonight going through the fields. Good, cool. Oh, Drag Van, you're out. Yep, we got one more minute. That's a good call. 55% saying no, 45% saying yes. I don't think that the 3800 competes. I don't think that would be really hard to do. Even if we could have good ported aluminum heads, we could have really good ported aluminum heads with the 4.8. It's just bigger and it's going to make more power. And so the boost is definitely going to be lower. So the flow rate of the blower is going to be more if we are indeed, like with the M90, you'd be indeed maxing the blower out at whatever blower speed we could run. And so one of them would just have a lower boost than the other. I wish I went old school and just kept the Fox body with Flowmasters and shorty headers. Junk turbo ruins the sound, but it does add a lot more power than the Flowmasters do. The boost level in 3800 would have to be cranked up. Well, that's the point, is that if we're at the maximum RPM of the M90 blower, there is no more turning the boost up. And the boost pressure would be higher on the 3800 in the scenario that we're talking about, because it would be more restrictive, but that's not a good thing in this case. I'm surprised that the vote was split. My understanding is more NA power will be more boosted power up until the blower is spinning a max speed. Even when it's spinning a max speed, it will still be more, because, like I said, the blower flows more at a lower pressure. A given blower speed, assuming that the front of it is not restricted, that we have a big inlet going into it. You'll need the compressor supercharging for the lawnmower. I think it'd be pretty easy to do that, right? I mean, a lawnmower doesn't make very much power, right? It's a couple horsepower or something. That would be a good leaf blower thing. Put a bypass valve on the leaf blower. Are we going to get fuel to it though? I think I could pressurize a plastic bottle and get extra fuel flow. Speaking of that, I need to fix the fuel. I think I figured out what the problem is on the GoPed. I haven't ridden it for a while. but it has a cracked fuel line from the fuel tank up to the carburetor. And so I think it's drawing air. It's very hard to spool a turbo with one cylinder. Guys ask me all the time, have you ever run a V8 and only spooled it with one side of the V8? And I have tried that. I tried that on a big block and it didn't work. When I tried it, I'm certain that it would work if I did it again. I'm certain that it would. But most of the people that I've told that I did that, they're like, why would you do that? That's not going to work. You're going to be only boosting half of the motor. I'm like, no, think about it. All the boost is still going into the carburetor. In this case, it was a blow-through carburetor. All the boost is still going into the carburetor. So the motor doesn't know that it's only getting boost from half of the motor. You're just using half of the exhaust. So all you have is a response rate problem if you can get the turbo spooled up. There should be no Briggs and Stratton discussion due to the connection with BSW. I don't know what BSW is. Maybe make an adapter for a dirt bike carb for the lawnmower and then push the leaf blower air through it. You might be able to do that. I didn't know how a cracked fuel line could draw air, but that makes my first car's bad times make more sense. Well, the way that this carburetor works, the way that it draws fuel in, it has a little the two-stroke has a little chatter mechanism in it that sucks the fuel in, and it won't suck the fuel in if the line's not sealed. All impellers have a max air movement rate. What would be the benefit of only using half a V8 to spool a turbo? I don't know. Saab did it in their V6, and I've seen it done on race motors. Cadillac did it way back in the day on their LMP car where they had a V8 but only used 6 of the cylinders to spool the turbo, probably because they were airflow limited on the turbos anyway, so that they could kind of manage power. That's the way that they restricted them. And so maybe they got better fuel mileage that way or something. I don't know. Boost the lawnmower with electric leaf blower. Call it hybrid. There you go. I'm thinking it had to be like a fuel mileage thing. You may find lawnmowers with those mini cup cars with the 8 horsepower Briggs engines. They hauled up. Just took a few laps to get up to speed. Definitely conservation of momentum for those things, but those are cool. Those are cool. But on that note, it is time to go. Thank you guys all for showing up. I will see you all tomorrow.